Hello travelers and welcome to the Tabletop Inn. Please join me at the tavern table while I do a quick overview of the World of Warcraft Wrath of the Lich King board game. This game was designed by Alexander Ortolov, Justin Campanian, and Michael Sanfilippo. I'm so sorry if I mispronounced any of these names. This game is a 1 to 5 player game that is in the Pandemic System. Essentially, it plays very similarly to the Pandemic games. Why don't we go ahead and take a look at it? So I've got the game all set up here for a normal 3-player game. This is actually kind of set up for the solo variant, but I'm not really worried about that because it's really the exact same as setting up for a normal game. For setup, it's really the exact same as Pandemic. You're drawing these, they're called Scourge cards in this, but they're basically like the infection cards from regular Pandemic. So you're drawing these cards and placing out the different ghouls based on what you've drawn. The first card you've drawn, you will place 3 ghouls on. In our case, we drew Amberpine Lodge, so we put 3 ghouls there. We've also placed the Lich King miniature in this region, which is noted by this space here. It's the purple with his face on it. There's 2 other regions. There's the red region here and the yellowish green colored region here. So if we were to draw on any one of these cards in this first one, he would go in one of those tiles instead. After that, you draw 1 more card and place 3 more minions on that space. In this case, we've got 3 more on Dalaran. Then after that, you draw 3 cards, putting 2 minions, or ghouls, on each one, which we've done here. And then you draw 3 more cards and place 1 ghoul on every space. So again, setup is basically exactly like Pandemic, where you're drawing your infection cards and putting out the cubes. In our case, we're putting out these really good-looking miniatures of the ghouls. The last card we draw, there's 1 more card that you draw. And when you draw that, you place the Abomination miniature on them. The Abominations are these little guys here, and they hurt. So in this case, we drew Abomination for Valgard. After that, players take a look at their player cards for whoever they decided to go play as. For King Varian Rin, he's got a couple actions here. He has a Whirlwind action, which is a free or ongoing action. When he fights, he may re-roll 1 die. His free actions for the Alliance: move any number of ghouls from connected spaces to yours. That's limited once per turn. And also, the space cannot have more than 3 ghouls. We'll get to those free actions in a moment. But also, on the back of the player card shows their starting space. In this space, Valgard. Tyrion Fordring starts his adventure here in the Northrend at the Breach. And Lady Jaina Proudmourne starts in Valiant's Keep. These are all denoted on the back of their player boards. Each champion has their own unique abilities. So some of them have free actions, some of them have just extra actions they can take, some of them have extra buffs. In this case, Tyrion Fordring has the ability of Ashbringer, or rather the weapon Ashbringer. When he fights, he may treat any number of shields as if they were fists instead, and his extra only him action is he can move another hero up to 2 spaces. And for Jaina Proudmourne, her action, she can teleport. She can move directly to any space up to 4 spaces away, limited once per turn. And her ongoing ability is she gets defense whenever she fights, an automatic defense. So that's in addition to any shields she would happen to roll with her die. So they're all set up in their own proper spaces. We've also got quests set up. The game recommends that you start off with the Nexus, Naraxmus, and Ulduar as quests, but there's a bunch of different quests that you can play through this game. I've just got them set off to the side here. So we've got them all set off in their different regions, and underneath them, we've got the reward cards here. So on a player's turn, they have 4 actions to do, just like in Pandemic. Although the actions are quite a bit different than what Pandemic is, one of the actions you can do is very similar, if not exactly the same to Pandemic, which is moving. Basically, you're just taking your player pawn and moving it to a space that is connected to whatever space you're currently on. The other action you can do is fighting. This is how you're removing the ghouls and the abominations from the board. You no longer just go to a space and take an action to remove them. You have to fight them to destroy them. To fight them, you're rolling these combat die and dealing damage equal to the amount of fist icons that you roll. After you deal damage and remove any enemies that have been destroyed, you are dealt damage in return. So let's say for demonstration purposes, Varian was over here at Amberpine Lodge and he goes to do some combat. So he rolls, and he rolled 2 fists. The little ghouls only take 1 damage to destroy. The abominations take 3. So in this case, we would be able to remove 2 ghouls because they were destroyed. Now, he's going to get damage done in return, Varian is. He's going to get damage based on the amount of ghouls that are left, which is 1, which would bring his health down from 7 to 6. Now, if you were to have rolled, say, a double fist icon here, and a shield icon, he would not gain any damage in return because he would have blocked the 1 damage incoming from the ghoul that's left, thus not taking any damage from it. So that is fighting. The next action you can do is doing quests. Let's say, for example, Varian is over here on Naraxxmas and he wants to do a quest. He will roll 2 die and advance the quest progress marker, which is shown on these cards here. He'll roll it based on however many fist icons he rolls. In our case, we didn't roll any. So right now, if he was on the Nexus, he would not be able to advance this track marker here because he didn't roll any fists. However, if he had any cards that matched these icons on the track, he could discard them and move it along the track. You can do that even if you've rolled shields and weren't able to actually move along the track. So that's doing quests. The object of the game is to complete these 3 quests and then taking on Arthas in the Ice Crown Citadel. So the Ice Crown Citadel will flip over, revealing the iconic battleground that you've seen from the video game, and Arthas gets moved there. His influence is no longer affecting the map, and the Ice Crown Citadel siege begins. So that's doing quests, and that's also kind of leaning into the end of the game because you have to complete those 3 quests in order to activate the Siege of Ice Crown. The last action you can take is resting. As long as you are on a space that is not a quest space, in our example, as long as you're not on the Nexus, Naraxxmas, or Ulduar space, you can rest. You can roll the die and heal based on the amount of fists you roll. So in this case, we rolled 1 fist, so the resting character could heal 1 damage. So those are the basic actions that you can take throughout the game. The starting hand for a 3-player game is 4 cards, and the 4 to 5 player game is 3 cards. In our case, we've got 4 cards because we're going to be doing a solo play later on in the game. Basically, these cards give you some free actions that you can do during your turn. In this case, we've got travel here. We may move any hero on your space up to 2 spaces, including your own, obviously. So if you're trying to get someone somewhere else, you can use this card to play it and move them across the board. We've also got fight cards. These cards can be played, during a fight to add to your fighting power. In this case, it adds 1 fist to any fight on the space. Then we've got defending cards, which prevents 2 damage to any hero on your space. So those are the different cards we can have. We've also got Stronghold Cards. Whenever they're drawn, we have to immediately place 1 stronghold on any space without a quest or another stronghold. We've also got Scourge Rises, which is basically like the epidemic cards that you've seen in Pandemic. We'll advance the Scourge marker, draw the bottom card of the Scourge deck, and move the Lich King if needed. We'll fill to 3 ghouls, that bottom card that we've drawn, and spawn 1 abomination. Then discard that card. So that is the very high overview of the game. There's a lot going on here. I don't want to get into everything. We've got the Despair track over here, which is kind of like the Outbreak tracker. If you get to the bottom, you've lost the game. You've got the Scourge track over here that shows how many ghouls you are spawning every time you draw a card. Once we get to the Ice Crown Citadel Siege, so this is all flipped over and Arthas has retreated to Ice Crown, we will flip over this Ice Crown Citadel quest. And it's giving you a reminder that the Lich King is always at +1 damage. So in this case, he's actually doing 3 damage back to us during this raid. Now, whenever we're done with this quest, we'll take one of these markers and we'll move them onto this one to start tracking the Ice Crown Citadel Siege. Basically, we have to get this all the way to the end to defeat the Lich King and win the game. The game does not end like in Pandemic. The game does not end if you've drawn all of your hero cards from the hero deck here. However, if you've drawn all these cards and you need to draw, this Despair track will go up 2 spaces. The game also does not end if you run out of components like in Pandemic, but instead, again, if you need to place a component and you cannot, the despair track still moves down. So ultimately the game ends at the end of this as the despair track goes down. The despair track also moves if the players are defeated in battle. So that's a very high overview of the game. Why don't I go ahead and sit back down? I'll give you my initial thoughts on it. So I think this game is going to be very, very interesting. Now, to preface this, I really like the World of Warcraft lore. The game, the MMO, I was a huge fan of it all the way up until Battle for Azeroth, and then I lost interest in it for whatever reason. It probably was because that my tree got burned down for the Alliance. If you don't like that, sorry about you. But again, and it's not a big deal. It's a joke, by the way. But still, for whatever reason, it wasn't actually because of the tree, but for whatever reason, I got out of the MMO around the Battle for Azeroth time. But I think it's just because trying to follow up Legion was a huge feat, but that's not what we're talking about here. Anyway, to preface that also is going to go towards my bias. I love the World of Warcraft lore, and I honestly think that the Pandemic system works best with the Wrath of the Lich King era, because the Scourge is exactly like a plague. It is a plague, and they are spreading across the earth, and you are trying to keep that Scourge from spreading. So this fits perfectly with the Pandemic system. I think it's done really well. I think it's integrated the quests into the game fairly well. And again, this is just from first looking. I haven't played it yet. I'm going to very, very soon. I'm going to do a solo playthrough here in a couple minutes. But I really like the artwork on it. The artwork on the cards is fantastic. The components are amazing. These little miniatures are great. They've got a lot of good detail on them. This is the only one of the few games that I've considered painting them, but I don't have as light of a touch, so I'd really screw that up. But I really like these miniatures that have come with it. Overall, I think this is going to be a really interesting game. If you like Pandemic, I really would suggest giving this a look, because I think it does give a little bit of a fresh look at the genre. If you like Warcraft, again, I would really consider giving this a look, because it is another way to experience the Wrath of the Lich King era of World of Warcraft. So for now, that is about all I have. If you really like this video, please leave a like. If you really didn't like it, leave a dislike, I guess. If there's anything I could have done better, please leave a comment to let me know. And as always, thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed your stay at the Tabletop Inn, and we'll see you next time. Take care.